Hello and welcome to Fiscal Town Hall meeting. Today we're talking about deposit slip processing in Fiscal, as EDF will be retiring in October 28th. My name is Yasar Dabur. I'm the Department Liaison for California State Treasurer's Office, and with me from the STO as well is Ann Thierry. She is the Bank Reconciliation. This agenda will be talking about key terms that we will be using throughout this presentation. We'll cover user roles impacts, business processes impacts, and we'll have some demonstrations for you in the system, as well as we'll talk about, we'll cover some frequently asked questions, and we will be taking questions at the end of our demonstrations and covering these topics. Terms, we have the deposit slip. As you know, this is a document we use to document the deposit we make on behalf of a certain department. It contains information such as the location, bank accounts, amounts, type of deposit we're making, cash, checks, etc. It's the same deposit slip you're familiar with. Supplemental deposit, on the other hand, is a tool we use when you understate the amount you actually deposited, and we will be showing you a demonstration about that. Fiscal offers two different roles in the system. The first one is deposit slip processor. As the name indicates, that would be the person who would be entering the information, generating the deposit slip in the system, and printing the deposit slips. On the other hand, Fiscal also offers deposit slip viewer. This role will have access to the same information as the processor. However, as the name indicates, it's a viewer only. You could only see information. They cannot edit. They cannot change information. They cannot make any changes to the deposit slips. Now, departments and management will decide who will have which role will be decided for you. Deposit slip overview. Now, EDF, as I mentioned earlier, will be retired starting October 28th. You will not have access to that. Everything you were doing in EDF, you'll be doing in Fiscal. And to print a deposit slip, you will need a microtoner. Now, a microtoner stands for magnetic ink reader, character reader. And many of you, some of you might not be familiar with this term, but let me put it this way. If you have a printer that prints deposit slips or check, you already have it. You don't have to worry about it. And we did send you communication in the past for software and hardware requirement. We did include the needed printer and microtoner that you may use with Fiscal. So let's look at the life cycle of deposit slip right now. So everything starts with the department collecting funds from different as revenues, fees, etc. These funds goes to the department, at which point the departments have to do two things. First thing, they have to enter the information into the EDF right now. Once you enter the information to EDF, the information is transmitted directly to STO. In return, you could print the deposit slip using EDF. Using that deposit slip, you combine it with the funds and you take it to the bank and you make the deposits. You could do that electronically or you could do it in person. What happens in the background is that STO reconcile the information you provided with the information coming from the bank to make sure that the amount you said you were going to deposit actually deposited in the bank. Then the STO moves and transmit this information to SCO. Now, what you see boxed in red right here, now that's going to be changing and it's going to move to Fiscal. It's going to be the same process, but with more ability to edit and change information. I think it has some functions that you would like in Fiscal. So what changed from EDF to Fiscal? Pretty much everything's still the same in terms of deposit slip is a deposit slip. Departments still have the ability to determine their location codes. These codes can be used to identify the money being deposited. Department will also still have the ability to enter agency-only information on the deposit slips. Deposit slips will contain the details that the STO needs for statistics to compute the banking fees. The combination of deposit type, CTS account, and location code and bank account will be used to configure what your department will see on the deposit slip entry page. That is, DGS employee will only see DGS information. They will not see the STO's information, and so on. Now, this configuration will be maintained by the STO staff. Any changes to this configuration, you could request these changes from STO directly, or you could fill out a case with the Fiscal Service Center, and they will send us your request, and we'll take care of it. Requiring approval from the STO, such as the supplemental deposit, will not be posted to the general ledger until they are approved by the STO. And until that time, they will remain in hold. Let's take a look at the deposit slip entry page in Fiscal. As you notice on the top right here, we have the CTS bank account. Now, some departments have more than one CTS account, and that's why you have this magnifying glass on the side. You would click on it, and you will see the CTS only pertinent to your department. As I said, you will not see information related to other department, only to your department. Likewise here, the location, if there are locations associated with that particular CTS account, if there are more than one, you click on the magnifying glass and you'll be able to select the location you're working with. Likewise for the depository bank and the demand account. Here, you notice we have deposit types. We have several deposit types in Fiscal. We have manual, we have standard, we have remote, we have electronic, and we'll go over that in our demonstration. Now, on the bottom right here, you'll see deposit transport methods. We have bank stamp, and that basically taking the deposit to the bank and have them stamp your deposit slip. A night deposit, that's for a few departments, they do have arrangement with the banks whereby they make deposits after hours, and that's the selection they would make for that situation. If the department is transmitting electronically, they would select this one, as the name indicates. If they have carrier service, they would select this. If they're mailing, it's this selection. And finally, if they do transmit the information or send the deposit slip by any other methods that are not indicated by the first 5 options, you would select others. Date is basically the date you're creating the deposit slip. That's automatically generated. You cannot control that. And there has been some upgrades into the system. You will see where it says entered by. That's where you will have your name listed, and that would be the signatory to the deposit slip will be taken from there into the deposit slip. And below that, you will also find that your email will be listed. And the reason for that is if STO, for any reason, need to contact you for an issue with the deposit slip, they will use that email to contact you. The deposit date, however, may vary. In that I know certain department, they do prepare the deposit slip at one day, but they make the actual deposits in a couple of days. So you could future date your deposit slips. That is fine. As for STO comments and this box right here, STO override, these are for STO use only, so you may overlook that. Deposit slip status, we have 3 status, or 3 types. We have draft, we have hold, we have ready. And we'll cover those in our demonstration. You have the deposit slip number and a confirmation. We'll also cover all that. Here's the statistical information, what type of deposit you have, how much in currency, how much in coins, adjustment, check, etc. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. This is the deposit slip example. This is what PDF produces to you. And we worked at Fiscal to make sure that our deposit slips look exactly the same. and we will elaborate for you in our demonstration in 1 minute. Now, these are the demonstration we're going to go over quickly so we could take your questions afterwards. So we're talking about standard deposit slips. The standard deposit slip means it's when you get funds in your office, checks, cash, coins, etc. You fill out the deposit slip, you print it out, you take it to and then you take it to the bank. And let's elaborate on that. We were actually signed out while I was giving the presentation, so it's going to be a minute. Just if you would bear with us for 1 moment to sign in again to the back in the system. All right. So this is what we call the landing page. This is what the first thing you would see signing in into Fiscal. If you click on Classic Home, which should take you to the Classic Clerk of Fiscal, you navigate to the deposit slip entry page. You're going to follow these navigation path. You go, if you notice there's two arrows here on top. If you click them, that would sort everything alphabetically. Under account receivable, we go to payments. We go to online payments, and there you find deposit slip entry page. We click on that. This takes us to the search criteria page. We'll get back to that later on. It's really nice. There's some nice features about this. We'll get back to it later. But first, let's start with creating our standard deposit. We click on Add a New Value. Now, for deposit types, for now, you're not familiar with them. So to pick it up, you're going to make your selection, click on the magnifying glass. And we're looking for standard, or the code S. In the future, all you have to do is just type an S right here and click on Add. Now, the system, this is a testing environment. So it's defaulting to the Department of General Services 001. That's their CTS bank account. So we're just going to use it for elaboration right here. Again, for CTS bank account, we're using 001. Let's see if we have any locations available. Yes, there are many locations associated with that CTS account. I make my selection. For agency use, that's information that you could include anything you want pertinent to your department. Some inner office codes, accounting information, you could put it right here, like say just for elaboration. Oops, I have my so it's a standard type, Bank of America. That's a demand account I'm using. It's a standard, it's defaulting to bank stamp because I'm going to take the funds to the bank. Notice here it says entered by deposit slip processor. As I mentioned to you earlier, your name will be listed right here, and your email will be right below it. One thing about this, if you could see that I cannot really type anything for the deposit slip numbers because they're dimmed. The system will assign me numbers automatically. To demonstrate, let's just say I'm making a deposit of $1,000. Include the cents here because we're talking about currency. Coins, let's say I have 99 cents. Automatically, the system will recognize it as such. Let's say I'm making $1,500. I have to include the cents, 2 zeros, and I have to put the item count. Let's say I have 3 checks. Then I have to add up the total right here. That's $1,299. Now I'm ready to make my deposit. I go to the deposit slip status. I change it from draft to ready. I move to the bottom of the page and save it. It's an error. I forgot to put the deposit date, but this is a good elaboration to show you that the system, if you're missing anything in the deposit, it will not allow you to save it. So I need to select the deposit date. Now let's try it. Save. Notice what happened right here. We have when this processing took place. It's a pre-approved by whom usually, as I said, this would be your name listed right here. And now we'll wait until 2:30 p.m. and at which time this deposit will be processed. Now, let's say I'm going to use actually, I'm not going to go in the same order. I'm going to elaborate. Let's say now it's not 2:30 p.m. yet, and I made a mistake. Actually, instead of $1,000, it's $2,000 that I'm depositing in cash. All I have to do is I go to the status, I pull out that deposit slip, I change it back to draft, and now I have access. I could actually change the information. So I'm going to make it $2,000, and I'm going to change the total. And now all I have to do is change it back to ready. And keep an eye here. See that pre-approval status is gone. So now once I save it, it's going to come back again. And it's going to change the timestamp as well. It's as simple as that. So that's a new functionality added by Fiscal that you didn't have in EDF. It makes life easier for everybody. And I think it's a really nifty addition to deposit slip processing. The next type or the other type of deposit that some departments use is a manual deposit. A manual deposit is usually used by departments that have remote satellites that don't have internet. I'm not sure who doesn't have internet today, but some departments still don't use it, and maybe they don't have access to computers. So what they do is that they take the funds directly to the bank and they fill out a deposit slip at the bank using their own deposit slips, maybe pre-printed by the department or maybe the bank deposit slips. Then they take these deposit slips, they send it to the main office, at which time they will have to enter this information because, as we mentioned earlier, you have to inform STO of the deposit you make so that the STO could reconcile your information versus what you actually deposited in the bank. To elaborate on that, we go back to deposit slip entry. Okay, now notice that navigation path is right here on top. It's always there. And I did save it actually in favorite, just that you know, to make your life easier in the future. You don't have to keep navigating. All you have to do is just add to favorite. Press OK. And now it's there. Anytime I want to go to it, simply just go to favorite right away, click deposit slip entry, and you're there. So now we're going to elaborate on manual deposit slips. So for manual deposit slips, again, I press on the magnifying glass. I look for the manual, which is the letter M. Main difference, same information, same thing as DGS. The locations we have in here, you can select different location. Same bank information. It because it's manual, it's bank stamp. Entry date. Here's the deposit slip processor, your name, your email. Now I'm going to select deposit date. Only in manual, you may actually backdate it to reflect the actual date in which you made the deposit.
Correct.
Only in that. But other deposit will not allow you to backdate it. Only in manual. Remember that. Another thing you're going to notice here that the deposit slip number is now it's not dimmed anymore. So now let's say I have a 6-digit deposit number. 123450. I have to confirm it. Now, let's say just for sake of time, I'm just going to say it's for $1,000. That's the only deposit we have. $1,000 in cash. And change it to ready. And now I'm ready just to save it. Okay, please enter total. Because again, that's one thing I'm not sure why we don't have it yet in Fiscal, but it doesn't tally up the number for you. You have to do it manually. And because I only entered 3 zeros, the system thought it was $10. So I need to actually put 5 zeros. And save. There you go. You're ready. Let's try to print it out, see how it looks like. And print deposit slip. In mind that we are in testing environment, so there is a few glitches that you will not see in production. One of which actually we see right here on the bottom. These supposed to be your bank account, your routing number, etc. It'll be right here in the bottom. But let's take a look at the actual deposit slip. As you see, this is the deposit slip that we entered, 123450. Is manual, stated right here. There's the bank information. Notice one thing about here, it says if no bank stamp, check one. Because it is a bank stamp, we didn't check any of these boxes. For agency use, you have 4 lines, up to 4 lines, you could write any information you'd like. Date deposited, who did it, this is the signatory to the deposit slip, that will be your name right here. And it's ready to be printed out. Go back to the system. I'm going to elaborate now. Actually, before we do this, how do I delete it? Again, it's not 2:30 p.m. yet. And I decide I want to delete the deposit. All I have to do, again, go back to draft. And now that it's in draft, click on delete, and it's gone. Now, one question I had is in a standard deposit, if you delete it, you're going to lose that number. Let's say it was 004. It's going to be, you may just mark it for your record that it was deleted. But if your accounting protocol mandate that you actually really need it and you need to recycle it, you may contact STO to reconfigure the system so that you could actually use it. Now, the next thing I'd like to elaborate on is remote deposit or electronic deposits. Back to deposit slip entry page. Now, I would like to add a new value. Now, for electronics, we have several types, actually. We have what we call remote, and that's usually a remote right here is usually a desktop scanner used by departments. But also we have ICL, image caching letter, and that is a more sophisticated scanner used by certain departments.
It's a larger scanner. It's usually would be on the floor because it's too big for a desk.
Right. And I think these are the only 2 types that your department will be using. The pre-sort are for big departments, and we don't have anybody joining us from this
from the pre-sort.
From the pre-sort departments.
Yes.
Okay. So in this case, if you're using the desktop scanner, I think this would be your selection right here, E for electronic, or if it's ICL, image caching letter, it will be A. So for elaboration, let's just select electronic and add. Now, likewise, again, a CTS bank account defaulted to certain location associated with that CTS account. I'm going to select one of them. If you notice here, actually, locations kind of changed because the system is, even this testing environment only has these locations with electronic deposits. That's why you only see these locations. You cannot select one that doesn't have electronic scanner. And that's always can be configured into the system. So let's just make any selection. Bank of America, BO2. Now here we have we need to select electronic as a transport method. Same thing. Your name going to be here, your email, today's date. Here, you will not have access to the deposit slip number. No, not for currency, not for coins. The only thing you'll have access to is checks because you are scanning checks. So let's say, just for elaboration again, 1 million. Now the system will compel me to enter, see actually it's 10,000. Will compel me to enter check counts. So I'll put 100. So the system understood that it's $10,000. I'm just going to put $10,000 right here. And again, change the status to ready. Okay, and I'm ready to save it. And voila, we're ready. The deposit slip is ready. You're ready to print it. You may print it and scan it in your scanner, sending that information or transmit that information electronically to the bank. We're telling you about all this editing criteria that is really helpful to you before 2:30 p.m. But let's say after 2:30 p.m. What are you going to do when you notice, oh, I actually made a deposit. I meant to add one more zero. This was intended to be 100,000. I mistakenly made 10,000 deposit. So I'm missing $90,000. So I sent the bank a deposit slip that says 10,000 with $100,000. So the way to fix that is by supplemental deposit. The way we do that, let's go to slip entry page again, add a new value, glass. Now notice we used remote. For remote, there is a supplemental for remote right here, signified with the letter J. For ICL, however, it's actually supplemental ICL standard, signified with the letter B. But since we were using remote or electronic, so I'm going to use the J letter just for elaboration. Add information. Notice here now the location automatically defaulted to SUP, which is supplemental deposit. It is electronic information for today's date. And now I'm adjusting actually. I'm not entering checks. I'm entering adjustment. So we said I deposited 100,000, but I made a deposit slip for 10,000. The difference is 90,000. So I'm gonna do it. You don't have to enter item count because you already accounted for it in the original deposit. I want you to notice something here. Now, ready. I set it to ready, but once I save, watch what happens up here on top. Automatically changed to hold. And as I mentioned in the presentation, that will stay as such until STO receives the information from the bank, validates the information that you indeed have $90,000 that you didn't account for, and then STO will approve it, at which point your department will recognize that $90,000.
It's also important that you don't set it to hold yourself because when myself or one of my coworkers tries to release that deposit, it will not appear because it was never set to ready. So you need to set it to ready and save and let it go to hold. Don't put it on hold yourself.
Thank you, Ann. So generally speaking, try to avoid using hold. Use draft instead. Don't use hold.
for supplementals.
For
You can
supplementals.
put other deposits on hold, but
Yeah.
in the supplemental category, I
Yeah.
have to go. We thought it was an error, but we found that you have to have one staff member put it to ready and save, and then the next one can approve. But it can't be the same person, so it's better if the agency gets it taken care of up front.
Good. Covered so far standard deposit, manual deposit, remote, supplemental. We showed you how to edit and delete. And finally, I'd like to actually cover a scenario, and this is a business process. As you know, in EDF, you for the department who selected to have an approver role, they did have that in that you have a processor who enters the information, and then the approver would go in there, review the information, and then approve it. Now, Fiscal doesn't have that, but a way around it would be, let's say, for example, take it back to draft. The system would allow you to save things in draft. So if this was be it standard, remote, manual, all you have to do is just save it in the draft and leave it like that. Email your manager or the approver would go in, sign in, review the information, and change the status, save it. And this would be a good workaround for that approver issue. Now, quickly, I'd like to go back to the search page. It's a really nice feature that we have in Fiscal. It helps you. It could help you to pinpoint a deposit made in a certain date for a certain amount. So, for example, we're dealing with DGS right now. We have, let's say we're looking first. You have to enter at least two elements for any search. So the deposit type, let's say we're looking for standard. And for CTS account, since we're using DGS as an example, is 001. And if I hit search, I didn't specify anything else, it's going to give me, apparently in the system, we staged these data. We only have a 3 standard type deposit for DGS. Let's change it to remote. Search. Now I have much more. Let's look up, for example, this was made in October 16th, 2018. If I want to find all the deposits made on that date, I'll just go here to the date, deposit date, and I'll just enter that information. October 18th, 2018. October 16th, 2018. And once I hit search, it's going to show me only those deposits that were made on that deposit. Also, the system allows you to do between dates, or less or equal to, between, which is really nice feature you didn't have in EDF. You could just copy this information and paste it